So we start off in the middle of the woods with a white-haired boy running after a reddish-brown-haired girl. You'd probably think, oh, they're just playing. They're just having fun. But we don't see, because they're running really fast, is that they're on all fours. They both have tails and ears. And the boy is running after her. And she's running away because she got frightened. And this boy, who has been in the woods for a while, is trying to run up beside this girl to calm her down because he accidentally freaked her. And after a while, she slows down because she's getting tired. And when she stops, he's not even panting yet. He walks up next to her and asks, "What is your name?" And she's like, "What? Why should I trust you?" And he then gets up on two legs and holds out his hand, saying, "I'm not here to hurt you. I am just wondering what you're doing in the middle of the woods." And she goes, I was left here. And he looks down, a little sad, because he doesn't know how he got into the middle of the woods. And he wonders why he was put in the middle of the woods. And she asks, what is he doing here? And he says he's been here as long as he can remember. Oh, and his left eye is bright crimson red. His right eye is dark navy blue. Unlike this picture, which is yellowish blue on one eye and blue on the other. So his left is dark crimson red and his right is dark navy blue. But back to the story. So he finally gets her to come with him to where he's been making his home, and it's a cave in the side of a mountain. When they walk in, they see something strange. Well, let me re-say that. She sees something strange. And when she sees this, just pretend that it's closed off and it's lit by torches and candles and all that stuff. She asks, "What is this place and why does it look like that?" And he goes, "This is my home. And I've lived here all since I can remember. And I would like for you to stay here until you can figure out why you were left here, and I kind of want a friend." And he looks down, a little sad, remembering, getting a flashback of someone he remembers, someone named Kachan, and another that he remembered calling them Dinky. And she said, "Sure, I'll be your friend. Could I stay here with you?" And he goes, "Yeah, but there's a few rules." And she asks, "What are the rules?" And he goes, "Survival of the fittest. So you got to get into shape or you die out here." And he says that casually, and she goes, "Wait, what?" Surprised, and he goes, "Yeah. We live in the woods now, and it's the survival of the fittest out here. There's no laws besides the law of survival of the fittest." So he walks up to the rack where he was smoking some food on and sees that it's prepared, and he says, if you're hungry right this second, I can give you one free meal. And then he says, I only really have enough strength a day to work out a little bit, then catch my own food. So you're going to have to catch your own food and work out with me if you want to survive. And she goes, sure, I'll take this one free meal. 3 years later, they are still living there, and all of a sudden they hear and this is the strange part, all of a sudden, Izuku, not Izuku, yeah, Izuku, hears a knock at the door. And he thinks that it's someone who's going to harm them, so he gets into a ready position to fight. And he walks to the window and looks out. And since his mutation quirk, yes, he has a mutation quirk, is always active, he has good night vision. And he sees this tall, or no, not tall, average looking man that looks like he hasn't slept in days outside the door. And then he knocks again and says, is there anybody in here? Because if there isn't, I'm going to come in. So Izuku presses one of the buttons, one of the strange buttons that are always on, and it turns all the lights off in the other rooms. And Uraraka knows that if all the lights shut off at once, either something happened and someone's here, or they need to go fix the power. Because there was books on the solar generator, the furnace, and all the electronics, and Izuku, being stupid smart, understood it and was able to fix this stuff when it needed to be fixed. And for some reason, yes, this is going to be a thing, all the tools and parts that he would need restock after he uses them. But it can only be restocked if it's used on a existing part of the building. And he doesn't know why that works. But it does. And the only way this cave is open is if he's either going to the cave, coming from the cave and not walked out yet, someone's in the cave, or he wants the cave to be shown. And this is all subconscious to him. So he walks out of the door ready for a fight, and he sees the man again and asks, what the hell are you doing here? The man says, this is a strange place, and we've had reports of it appearing and disappearing at random times. And that it's been a myth in this area for a while, and he wanted to know if it was actually true that this place was here. And Izuku says, you didn't answer my question of what are you doing here? And Izuku's getting a little pissed off, just a little bit, because the man's not completely answering his question. And the man finally says, I came to see if a villain has come through here, because I was chasing one. And I'm going to use Ochako Uraraka, but her quirk is not going to be gravity manipulation. That's not her quirk. I'm going to use the name Ochako Uraraka because I can't think of a name right now. So, Ochako comes out and asks, Izuku if everything is fine, but she doesn't call him Izuku, she calls him Deku. Because he doesn't remember his real name, and she says, Deku, is everything fine? And he goes, yeah. It's just another pro hero that wandered into the woods. And by this time they're 8-ish. Roughly 8, yeah. And Aizawa goes, why are you living out here, and what is this place? And Izuku goes, I don't know what this place is, but I'm living out here because I've always lived out here, from what I can remember. And she's living here because she was thrown out. And Aizawa goes, okay, that's a little strange. And he goes, okay, now you know. Now leave. So he shuts the door, and all of a sudden, Aizawa blacks out and appears outside of where the cave was, and the cave is gone. He can't see it. Oh, sorry. He can't see the cave. And he thinks he may be hallucinating it. So he goes and tells Nezu what he saw and what happened. And Nezu is like, okay, I'll go and check. And Nezu, with a tracker and a walkie-talkie or wire system, walks and runs into this kid that thought he was a stray animal in the woods. And he gets caught by the kid, and Nezu's like, oh, so you are actually out here. And the kid is like, wait, you could talk? And Nezu goes, yes, I'm the principal at UA. And the kid, somehow remembering what UA is like, oh, you're the principal of that hero school. He knows everything about the world, Izuku, but he doesn't remember how. And he's 8 at this time. And Nezu goes, yes, I am, and I would like to talk to you about enrolling in the future. And Izuku, remembering that he wants to protect people, says, is it the easiest way for me to protect people? And Nezu, hearing that he wants to protect people, is like, yes, it's how you'll be able to easily protect people. He's playing to his wants and his likes. Then Uraraka comes in with 3 rabbits, and she is currently ripped at this point. She's shorter than the left person, but by not that much, but that's her full height. And Izuku's full height is going to be the right person. But right now he looks like that. And Nezu says, okay, I will meet you in a month at this place. And Izuku says, where is this place? And Nezu says, it's in town, and town is that way. And points south. I don't actually know where any mountains or forests are compared to where UA was. So I'm just saying that it's north of UA. I know there's a forest around UA, but I'm not putting him there. And Izuku goes, okay, I'll meet you in 1 month there. If you are late, I will think of you as a traitor, and anything you say to me from then on is null and void. And Izuku says, I'm pretty sure I can trust you, but just in case, leave the wire here. And Nezu is a little shocked that the kid knew he was wearing a wire. So Nezu took off the wire and left it there, and Izuku goes, okay, thank you, now you can leave. And Nezu leaves, and Later that day, Aizawa gets called into Nezu's office, and Nezu says, Aizawa, you were right. They were out there. And Aizawa looks shocked because he thought he was hallucinating by that point because it's been a few weeks. And he says, I have a meetup with them in a month, and I would like for All Might to come with me. All Might's currently in America. So Nezu tasks Aizawa to go to America and fetch All Might for him. All Might comes to Japan and meets up with Nezu the day of the meetup, and All Might sees that Nezu's currently in a hurry, and he asks Nezu, why are you in a hurry? Nezu goes, oh, All Might, I need you to drive me to this place, and we need to get there immediately. I'm almost going to run late. And All Might's like, okay, I'll drive as fast as possible. And Nezu goes, no, we need to get there now. Because if I'm late, we'll miss our chance to discuss stuff with this person. And All Might's like, who is this person that you're so fixated with? And Nezu goes, you'll see when we get there. I'm sorry I have to do this, but it's going to be a little bit of a mean mite. So they get to the cafe, and it's a outdoor cafe. And Nezu is currently sitting at a table. And the kid walks up and greets Nezu respectfully. And Nezu greets him back respectfully, and All Might sees that he has a mutation quirk. And since Nezu is a quirked animal, All Might has respect for him, but he doesn't like mutation quirks. So All Might bites back an insult and is biting back the urge to throw up at the sight of Izuku. And he does this all the time, so he's gotten really good at biting back his tongue and not saying insults. Because he's still the symbol of peace, and in private, he still voices his opinion of how disgusting mutation quirks are. Then this girl walks up behind Izuku and sits next to Izuku, and Nezu asks, who is this? And Izuku says, this is the girl that you saw at when you first met us. And she says, I am Ochako. I'm gonna give her an American last name, Ochako Smith. And Izuku goes, not Izuku, yeah. Izuku goes, and who may this big man be? And Nezu knows All Might's personality and disagrees with his personality, but still sees him as important for safety. Says this is the number one hero, All Might. Because he's currently in buffed up form and he's not fought All for One yet. And Izuku didn't know, but he has the ability to sense ill intent, and he's like, can you please send him away? Or at least a little bit further, because I don't feel comfortable around him. And Nezu being like, okay, because he still wants to know them and understand why they're out there, because he doesn't see why they should be out there at all. He says, All Might, can you sit over there and just keep an eye on us? You don't have to be near us. Just keep an eye on us. And All Might's like, okay, I will. And the next thing that happens is they talk and they go their separate ways. Ochako agreed to go to UA and said they're 8 at this point. 7 years? No. Yeah, 7 years. Because I'm going to make it a high school in here. And a college. High school and a college. So they have to go to UA in 7 years. And I really hate what I'm going to do with his story in a minute. And I'm going to skip 5 years, and Izuku and Ochako have gotten a bit closer. Izuku's almost to his full height of 6'6", and she's almost to her full height of 5 foot. Yes, I'm making her short. But Nezu, knowing exactly where the cave is, ventures to the cave, and it's been 5 years. And he ventures to the cave and yells in, "It's Principal Nezu." And Izuku comes running out and says, "Morning, Nezu. I'll be right back." An hour later, Izuku comes back, and Nezu's currently sitting on the couch drinking some tea, because he had some tea delivered for them to try. He had some tea delivered to UA, a bitter one, a sweet one, and a plain one. And then he took them to the hideout where they've been living, because he's tried to get to know them and understand them. So Izuku sees him as an uncle figure, not a father figure, an uncle figure. And Ochako sees him as a father figure. And Nezu sees the bond between Ochako and Izuku. And at this point, Izuku has changed his name from Deku, which he remembers his parents calling him, to Izuku. I'll be back. I have to do some stuff for my parents. Okay. So it's been like 30 minutes in real life, but for you guys, it's going to be a split second. Where was I? Nezu just came over, and Izuku just caught some lunch for himself. And while Nezu wasn't there, Izuku and Ochako were talking and throwing jabs at each other, and now Izuku has a nickname for Ochako, and Ochako has a nickname for Izuku, and she calls him Zuzu, and he calls her Cat. So they have nicknames for each other. And Nezu says, "I'm going to have to see how far you are in the school system to know what class I need to place you in." And Izuku goes, "Sure, let's have a test right now, because I think school would be fun." And Kat, knowing exactly what happened at her school, was like, "It's not going to be fun. Why don't we just get homeschooled by Nezu?" And Nezu's remembering how discriminated mutation quirks are. He's like, "Sure, let me bring over a book, and I shall teach you guys." 2 years go by, and Zuzu and Kat, Izuku and Ochako, they learned quickly. No, Izuku learned a lot faster than Ochako, and Ochako comprehended stuff faster. So if someone told her something, like a long string of sentences that had a deep meaning, she would understand what the deep meaning is before Izuku. Izuku's more logical, and she's more philosophical. So when it's the UA entrance exams, Izuku tell says, Kat, I want to race you there. And then she's like, okay, bet. He's like, no, I won't bet because you probably will win. You're faster, I'm stronger. And she goes, true, but still bet. And she takes off running, and he's like, no fair, you cheated. They still have somewhat of a childish relationship. A few seconds later, or not a few seconds, like 10, 20 minutes later, they are at UA because they took off full speed, and a hero who had a speed quirk was trying to keep up with them and lost them after a minute of chasing them. And he just kept running in the same direction they did, and he finally reached UA and saw them chatting it up outside of UA. He walked up to them and said it's not appropriate to use your quirks without permission. And Izuku and Ochako say we weren't using our quirks, we were using our strength and speed. And this hero's like, okay then, well then you're really fast. And Ochako goes, yeah, I'm the fastest one. And Izuku goes, you can stop bragging, I'm the strongest one. She goes, you can stop bragging. And he's like, I'm not bragging, I just said that I'm the strongest. In a monotone voice, unlike you, who had a hint of sarcasm and a jab at me in your sentence. She's like, no, I didn't. And they start arguing. And he goes, okay. Now that I understand the situation, I'll let you off with a warning. Be careful with how your strength and speed are, because if you're too fast, people will think you're using your quirk and deny what you're saying. So he just lets them off with a warning that not everybody's as lenient as him. And Izuku's like, you look familiar. What is your name? And he's like, my name is Ingenium. And he goes, I don't remember ever seeing you before. And he goes, oh, no. I didn't say you look familiar to me. You look how someone described you. And Ingenium says, oh, who described me then? And Izuku says, Nezu. Ingenium's eyes widen a little, putting it together that these are the kids that Nezu was visiting so much. And he says, are your names Izuku and Ochako? And they say yes at the same time. And he says, good luck on the entrance exams. Hopefully you meet my little brother. And then Ingenium walks off and starts running back to where his patrol is. So they walk into the entrance. They walk into UA and they see All Might again, and they're like, yeah, we're not going near him. They see All Might talking to and by the way, Izuku does look like the picture, but he's a little shorter than 6'6", and Ochako is currently 5 foot, and she looks like the picture, but she's really clingy to Izuku when she's in places that they haven't been before. So she's kind of walking really closely behind him. But they get spotted by Midnight, and Midnight immediately thinks he's kind of cute, especially with those ears. And they get spotted by Mirko, and Mirko's like, ooh, her animal instincts kind of kick in, and she's like, ooh, Alpha, don't mess with him. They get spotted by Snipe, and I'm sorry I have to do this, but Snipe has a child fetish, but he doesn't actively seek it out. And he sees the short Uraraka, and he's like, oh, I can't be in her class. I'd get distracted too much. And he sees where they're walking, and he's like, wait, who are they? He walks over to Mike, who's currently putting together the test to be printed. And he asks Mike who they are, and Mike's like, who? And he turns around, sees the two, and he's like, oh, those guys look familiar to how Nezu described them. And Snipe puts it together and goes, oh, they're the two that were in the forest? And Mike says, wait, they're in the forest? Snipe goes, yeah. And they start talking, and everybody starts overhearing them, and Mirko is just trying to stay away from Izuku because she instinctively is a little frightened by him, but doesn't know why she's frightened by him. And instinctively she wants to fight him. So she's kind of distracted, and he walks by her and he smells rabbit because his senses are heightened, and he smells rabbit, and he's like, oh, so that's her quirk. I thought those were just fake. And she snaps out of it. Because she was in her mind basically talking to herself. And Uraraka passes by and whispers, because she sensed the fear in Mirko, and says, and whispers, no need to fear, and just keeps walking. And Mirko, hearing the no need to fear, is a little terrified because of what just happened. So when they got to Nezu's office, Nezu greeted them and asked if they wanted tea, and Izuku said, yeah, I'll take the really black tea that normally people put creamer in. Eddie starts laughing because he knows Nezu doesn't drink coffee. And Nezu just face palms, going, I don't have any coffee. I don't drink that. And he goes, I know, I'm just teasing. And Uraraka runs up and hugs Nezu because she saw him as a father figure, and Izuku started to see him as a father figure because of how long they've been talking and visiting each other. But the door's currently shut, and all of a sudden they hear a knock at the door. And Nezu says, come in and lets go of Uraraka. And Uraraka goes back behind Izuku, still a little clingy. And Aizawa walks in. And Aizawa sees these two kids and asks, are they them? And Nezu goes, yes, they are, and I'd like them to be in your class. Aizawa goes, since their brains were pounded in by you, I don't care if they're in for my lessons. I just care if they're good enough to be in my physical lessons. And Izuku goes, by the feeling of your aura, you've killed and you're ready to kill. So I have a high respect for you. And I take your challenge. And Nezu, not telling him anything about the teachers of UA or the pro heroes at all. He just taught them how the world works and what people do, and he taught them how the world works mainly, and the history of the world. And his eyes widened when Izuku mentioned that he feels the aura of a killer from Aizawa. Aizawa's eyes widen, and he then says, can you please excuse me for a minute? And he walks out and walks to a quiet room and starts to break down because he doesn't like that memory of him killing someone, killing a villain, because he saw the fear and horror in the villain's eye when Aizawa killed him. And Nezu says it's difficult that Aizawa is destroyed from that kill, and please don't bring it up again. And Izuku says, sorry, I didn't know. I shall not bring it up again. And Nezu goes, it's fine. He will forgive you. But to get you into UA, you need to take 2 tests. And he goes, I already know. I saw the guy with the microphone for a caller currently at the computer printing stuff, and the bunny girl taking a schematic to the what looked like a building room. And Nezu says, yeah, we have a teacher here who basically has a 3D printing ability that can shape metal. And Izuku goes, oh, that's pretty cool. Maybe I could get them to fix my claws. And Nezu says, what do you mean fix your claws? And he puts up his hand, and Nezu sees the missing fingernail. And Nezu asks, what do you mean fix your claw? And Izuku changes his fingernails from normal fingernails to a really dense, durable metal. And it sharpens, and he goes, I was fighting something, and I struck wrong with my fingernails, and now I'm missing one. And it's the fingernail on his pointer finger. On his right hand pointer finger. And Nezu says, okay, I'll see what I can do to get you into the person to fix it, but you have to run now to do the written exam. So they pass the written exam with flying colors, obviously, because they're taught by Nezu. On to the practical exam. Izuku and Ochako were split up, but Nezu was at the gate for Ochako because Ochako started to have a panic attack, and she was starting to freak out so bad that she was about to activate her quirk to her max. Flashback to 5 years ago. No, not 5. 7 years ago. A month after the lunch date, or not lunch date, lunch out with Nezu. Izuku calls up Nezu, and Nezu answers, hello, this is Nezu. How may I help you? And Izuku says, I built a phone, and I would like to get the name of my and Ochako's quirks. And he goes, sure, I'll make an appointment. You'll just need to show up. And he goes, okay. And they go to the quirk doctor, and the quirk doctor is not Dr. Uchiko. It's somebody different. Because obviously it has to be a mutation quirk doctor, or to identify the mutation quirk compared to the normal quirk. So they get there, and the mutation quirk doctor is testing their quirks and sees the name of Izuku's quirk and says, this is strange. You have 2. The first one is called Pack Leader, and the second one's called Alpha. I understand what Pack Leader is. It's when you get a group of creatures, and he points to the wall of currently a lot of images for creatures, and he says, whatever creature you think of, you can add to your pack. And you understand them no matter what. You can even talk to them mentally. And I do not know what this alpha skill means. Or does. But it does have a requirement. that it does show me. And it says, a deep love for somebody in your pack. And Izuku's eyes widen and says, you can stop now. You can stop now. And Ochako walks in and she has her quirk tested, and Izuku says, if you find the quirk beta on Ochako, can you please not tell her and tell me? And the quirk doctor says that's a breach of doctor-patient confidentiality. And Izuku says, it's for her own safety if you tell me. And he goes, okay, I will tell you if she has this quirk, and I'll tell her too if she asks what her second quirk is. Because I have to tell her how many quirks she has. And so the doctor tells her how many quirks she has, and he says she has 3. And she's like, what are my quirks? And she just says, what are my quirks? And the doctor's like, okay, so I don't have to tell her all of them. I just need to tell her a few of them. And he says, your first quirk is called Wolf Maiden. And your second quirk, another quirk is called Pack Member. And he says, as a pack member, the pack leader is obligated to help out the pack member if the pack member is in a dire situation. And Wolf Maiden says that you have the ability to transform into a wolf while in the presence of the pack leader, if he's in wolf form. And he turns towards Izuku and gives him the nod of she does have it. And Izuku just, his eyes widen and goes, oh crap, I don't know if this is good or bad. So when they get back to their place, he calls up Nezu again and gives him the rundown of their quirks. And Nezu saying, what do you mean quirks? And Izuku gives Nezu the rundown of his first quirk being pack leader. And that's why he looks like a wolf, because he's part wolf. Nezu asks, what do you mean you're part wolf? And he says, my pack leader makes me biologically similar to a wolf. And I can transform into one. And I can create a pack to follow me. I also have a... Oops. It's 3 o'clock. Yay! I also have a quirk called Alpha. And he explains Alpha and Beta and what those do. And he explains the downfalls of Beta. Makes the person who holds Beta, the quirk Beta, really dependent on the leader or alpha of the pack. So it's... What, Fluffy Butt? My cat Jack is currently trying to knock me over. What? So Nezu was like, okay, I can't tell any of the other teachers until I know what class they're in. So Nezu is currently standing at the gate, and everybody's questioning why Nezu is there, and Nezu is talking to Ochako, and Ochako is talking to Nezu calmly, because she's calming down slowly. And when Mike says go, she gets in a fighting stance and zones out into fighting. And she's fighting like a wild animal. A wild beast. and she rips the robots limb from limb really quickly. And Izuku's doing the exact same, just not as fast. So while they're currently fighting robots, Nezu walks to the observation room and everybody asks, why were you down there talking to that potential student? And Nezu says, if they get in, I shall tell you what their quirks are. And everybody's like, what do you mean quirks? And he goes, that's a secret for right this second. If they get into a certain class, I'll tell the teacher of that class. And it'll be their choice if they tell it to anybody else. So after the test, Nezu sees their score and says, okay, and presses the intercom button and says, Shota Aizawa, please report to my office in 5 minutes. Then he calls in Midnight and says, please report to my office in 30 minutes. Then Mirko, then President Mike. And then he was about to call All Might and then says, I will have to tell Aizawa to stick near them when All Might is teaching. So Nezu gets them all into his office and he tells them the rundown of he tells Aizawa the rundown of all their quirks and the alpha and beta quirk. And then the rest of the Midnight and Mike and Mirko all walk in and he tells them the rundown of their quirks except for the alpha and beta quirk. And he says, Aizawa shall be sitting in through your classes, but he will only be keeping an eye on those 2 students. And hearing how many quirks they have, they understand that it probably will be easy for them to lose control. And Nezu knowing exactly why and doesn't tell them. So we skip a week. They're currently at their home packing up. And Nezu arrives and says, welcome to Your Hero Academia. And gives them the speech. And Izuku is kind of chuckling through the entire thing and says, couldn't you have given us a letter? And he goes, I prefer to do it in person if I can. And Izuku goes, fair enough. So every thing that they packed up and they pull out of the house is just sitting in the middle of the woods right this second. And all of a sudden, a mountain bike, a dirt bike, if you want to call it that. They hear a dirt bike coming and they wonder who it is, and all of a sudden this guy, he rolls up on the dirt bike and says, are you the 2 that Nezu has sent me to pick up? And they go, we don't know. And he goes, okay, I'll take your stuff and you can hop on here. And he hops off the dirt bike and opens a portal and another dirt bike comes through. And he opens a portal underneath all Izuku's stuff and Ochako's stuff, and it goes through. And he says, I can transport inanimate objects, can't transport humans. And the portal is still open and another dirt bike comes through and he says, these are the fastest way out. And he hops on the one he got off and says, everybody hop on your dirt bike and let's ride. And they ride through the forest and they get to UA an hour later, and Izuku says it would have been faster if me and Ochako ran. And he goes, yeah, but I heard what happened with Ingenium. And they go, yeah. Okay. Yeah, this was fastest. So they walk in and they go to the dorms that, as you said, they had. And they walk in and they see random people. And they hear someone yelling, "Oi, Dinky! The hell are you doing? Damn extra!" And Izuku, hearing Dinky, runs over to the voice and asks, "Who are you calling Dinky?" Because I remember someone named Dinky. And Kaminari walks out of his room and says, the fuck you want, Bakugo? Not that stupid anymore." And he goes, "You're still stupid every time you overuse your quirk." And Izuku looks at Kaminari and goes, "Dinky?" Tilts his head and his ears flatten. And Dinky sees the ears and is like, "Oh my god. Izuku, is that you?" Or no, "Deku, is that you?" And Izuku goes, "I go by Izuku now." And Dinky runs up and hugs him, and Katsuki, who is just about to walk back in, hears, "Deku, is that you?" And starts listening to the conversation, and him going, "I go by Izuku now." Katsuki turns around and sees the tail and remembers the kid with the fluffy tail that he loved playing with, runs out and says, "No. No, 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 no. I thought you died." And Izuku goes, "What do you mean I died? I've been in the forest for the last 11 years." And Danky and Bakugo look at each other and ask, 11? You've been missing for 12. And Izuku says, "I remember the last 11 years when I woke up in the middle of the forest not remembering anything. Except two names, Kachan and Dinky." And Bakugo and Dinky immediately knowing this is actually Izuku, or this is actually Deku, because only Deku called Katsuki Kachan. So they go into a group hug, and Uraraka is currently slowly freaking out in her room with all of her stuff because it's not the nice and chilly, it's the hot weather that's bothering her. Normally she's in a nice and chilly room with Izuku near her. And yes, the last 7 years they've been sleeping in the same room. And Nezu, not knowing this, booked them as two different rooms. And Izuku walked over to the women's dorm, and everybody asks, or all the girls who saw him and ask, "Why are you here?" And he's like, "I feel like something bad's gonna happen. So I'm gonna sleep here." And walks to Ochako's room, and when they first saw him, they immediately started blushing and got a nosebleed. Because he doesn't have a shirt on underneath his jacket that he has open. So they all see his six-pack abs. And Ochako is currently freaking out in her room, and then when the door opens, she smells a familiar scent and runs over and hugs Izuku. And calms down immediately. And another week passes. They've gotten settled in. Everybody knows who each other are, but not everybody knows each other's quirks. And it's time for the first day of UA. Everybody knows everybody else's except Izuku's and Ochoko's quirks. And when Aizawa walks in, he says, "All you brats shut up and sit down. It's time to start learning." And at this point, Izuku and Ochako have transformed into tiny wolves and are in the back, sleeping with each other in wolf form. And I must say that they're on the cusp of turning from a wolf cub into a full-blown adult wolf. So, since Aizawa has a soft spot for baby animals and cats, he sees the baby wolves and has a soft spot so he doesn't annoy them or get too loud, and he starts talking normally instead of yelling or using his quirk. He just uses his scarf to yank people if they start getting too loud. And they're asking, you yelled at the beginning of class and used your quirk. What's different now? It's like an hour into class, and he points to the back of the room and says, they are the strongest people in class, and they know all what I'm about to teach you. And they go, huh. Bakugo goes, huh. He's been missing for 12 years. He's not that smart. I know he's stupid smart, but not that smart. And Aizawa says, he hasn't been missing for 12 years. He's been missing from you for 12 years. We've known he's been out there for the last 10 years. And we couldn't make him leave that spot for the last 10 years. And then he says Nezu, the highest IQ in Japan, has been homeschooling them for the last 2 years. They're college-level students. And he explains their situation and how Izuku doesn't remember pretty much anything. And Kaminari and Bakugo says, he remembered us. And Aizawa goes, yeah, he said he only remembered 2 names, and that's it. So, it's the end of the day, and Izuku and Ochako have been sleeping the entire day, and even through lunch, and Aizawa was like, I really hate doing this, but I have to wake them up. So he walks over and puts a piece of meat on the plate that he set out, and it's not a really big piece of meat, it's just a tiny piece of meat, 2 of them, and Izuku slowly wakes up and sees the piece of meat and eats his piece of meat, and Ochako wakes up after Izuku got off of, or started moving, saw her piece of meat, ate it, and they fully woke up, and Aizawa says, okay, now that you're awake, it's time for the physical exam for this class. And he takes them out to the training field, and he tells them to throw this ball. And he throws it to Izuku, saying, you got the highest score. Go stand in that circle and throw this ball as hard as you can. He walks to the circle and throws it, and the ball breaks the sound barrier once, and everybody's confused. Because no human with a normal quirk can do that. And Izuku walks back and starts yawning and telling Ochako to get up and do it. And she gets up from the sitting position and throws the ball. Izuku threw it like a pitcher, and like a male pitcher, and Ochako throws it like a female pitcher in baseball. No, for her it's softball. And she used her speed to her advantage. It broke the sound barrier twice. And it went just a yard further just a yard further than Izuku's. So Izuku got 1,292 yards, and Ochako got 1,993 yards. 1,200. 1,293 yards. He got 1,292 yards. And everybody's confused, just looks at them like they're crazy, and he goes, I haven't even used my full strength. And Aizawa goes, can you please try that again and use your full strength? And he looks at Ochako and asks, was that your full strength? And she goes, yeah, I even used some speed with that. I didn't use my full speed because then I'd kind of break my arm, because it's not natural for me to do that. And he goes, okay, I understand, and we don't want any physical injuries here. And Bakugo's a lot chiller in this one, but he still insults other people if he doesn't respect them with fighting talent. He sees how strong Izuku is without trying. Aizawa says, you must throw the ball again and throw with your full strength. He then walks up to Momo and says, isn't your quirk creation? And Momo just nods her head, and he goes, can you make everybody earplugs? The ones that go in your ear and over your ear. And she goes, sure. And he also says, swim goggles too. And she goes, why swim goggles? And he goes, just trust me. And so she makes everybody swim goggles and ear protection. And before Aizawa puts it on, he says, I'm sorry that this is going to kind of break UA's windows. And Aizawa, hearing that it's going to break UA's windows, goes, how strong are you at full strength? And he goes, I'm strong enough at full strength to stop Mount Fuji from erupting. And with how much wind pressure that is needed and force behind the wind pressure, Aizawa doesn't even try to calculate it. He just knows it's going to be a lot. So he's like, okay, half power. And he goes, okay, so all you need is the goggles and the headphones and the earphones. And so he puts on both layers of earphones and the goggles, and Izuku throws it. And he doesn't have any protection, nor does Ochako, because they don't have any that fit them. And the closest window to him cracks, because this is windows that are meant to withstand All Might punches. They crack. And Aizawa's eyes are grateful that he had the goggles on, because when the sound barrier broke, it didn't break once or twice. It didn't stop breaking until it reached the outer atmosphere. And Aizawa sees the reading, and it says infinity. And then it has under error, speed not trackable. And Aizawa goes, what the hell? And Izuku takes the phone and puts it on the ground and puts up a 3, 2, 1. And once he puts his finger down, the thing shorts out and it catches fire. And everybody looks at him like he's insane, which he kind of is. But he has a very high... he doesn't value his life as much as other lives. And he wasn't inspired by All Might. So he doesn't smile. He just has a straight face 90% of the time. So they go back to their dorms, and Ochako finally gets the courage, after so many years of her having a crush on Izuku, to ask him out. And when she asks him out, he goes, no. And she feels absolutely crushed. Then he walks over to her, hugs her, and says, there's no need. You have, as your third quirk, beta. And she is like, what do you mean, beta? And he goes, I feel what you feel. Ever since I met you, I've had a crush on you. And her eyes widen, and he tells her the circumstances of the alpha and beta quirk and how they're linked. And she starts to understand that her love and his love are connected. And that everything he feels, she feels. Everything she feels, he feels. So every time she starts having a panic attack, he's trying his hardest not to lose control. And whenever he's angry, he tries his hardest not to link with her to project his anger on her. And she starts tearing up, happy that his feelings mirror hers, and he just kisses her, and she kisses back, and they have a fun night after that. And by this point, Mirako and Midnight Midnight found that how much Izuku cares about her. That's why he's so emotionless. And that's why Aizawa really just focuses on watching Ochako. Because Izuku walked up to Midnight and Mirako that if Ochako starts to freak out and get emotionally distressed, find a way to put her to sleep. Because if she gets too emotionally distressed, I'll immediately appear near her and start going berserk on the people who get near her. And Mirako and Midnight are like, okay, we understand. And Mirako asks, are you dangerous any other time? And he goes, I am not dangerous any other time. And then he tells the pack quirk, and he says that if you're willing, I can make you guys part of my pack, and you can understand my protective drive on the people I care about and the people of my pack. And it's the pack mentality of you live for the pack, die for the pack. And Mirako turns it down, saying as long as you don't openly hate other people and other things, I'm fine with you, fine being near you. And he goes, I know about the open discrimination against mutation quirk people and how it's hard to live. I honestly don't remember any of the mutation quirk discrimination from my early life because I've been in the woods for 11 years. And Mirako understands, and they start getting along. A month later, it's the hero versus villains. And Aizawa says, I shall be teaching you rescue training at the USJ in a month. But today, I shall be ghosting on the training today. And yes, Mina is in this class, and Izuku and Ochako immediately wake up, snap their heads to the door, and Izuku starts growling, and Mina, who by this point has become a member of Izuku's pack, has 2 quirks with her mutation on top of it. She has her acid, and she has pack member as a quirk. That whenever there's danger nearby, and Izuku, Ochako, and her, she has a sense of this danger. And she senses this danger, and she starts getting jumpy and jittery, and everybody looks at her like what's happening? And she goes, I don't know. I just sense that there's something either mean or dangerous coming. All of a sudden, All Might runs in and goes, I am here, walking through the door like a normal person. And Izuku transforms into his human state, and he starts openly growling at All Might. And Ochako is now growling at All Might because she doesn't like him, and Izuku doesn't like him either. And All Might is ignoring this. And Mina is trying to calm them down by thinking of happy thoughts and other stuff, and they're still just growling at All Might. Then All Might says, you can't be heroes without your costumes, and clicks a button, and the drawers open, and Izuku's costume comes out, and Mina's costume comes out, and Ochako's costume comes out, and they all have one theme. Ochako's costume doesn't have a ear attachment. Izuku's costume does not have an ear attachment, but Mina's costume has fake wolf ears. Fake pink wolf ears to match her hair. And Kirishima, with his slight mutation quirk, he can't, his quirk is slightly mutation, because he has a strange eye deformity compared to normal people. His eyes are a lot thicker, and his face is a lot flatter, if you could say that. Most people have like a indent for their eyes. He has a flat face. Somewhat. Yeah. That's how I best can describe it. He looks like he does in the anime. That's what he looks like. And Kirishima, he still has his hardening quirk, but when he sees Mina with the fake wolf ears, he gets a nosebleed. And Izuku, seeing this, starts laughing. And he walks up to Kirishima and gives him a deal. He says to Kirishima, I can get you on a date with Mina if you join my pack. And Kirishima says, what do I have to do when I join your pack? And he goes, have some kind of wolf theme to your costume. Mina thought the ears would be cute, so she put the ears on. And he goes, I honestly don't care what you add, just add something wolf themed. So, Izuku is currently shirtless, and all he has his jeans on. because his skin's a little thicker and tougher. And he fixed his fingernail, by the way. Took him a while, but he fixed his fingernail with the help of that hero. And Kirishima agrees, and he walks over to Mina and says, Mina, I'm only going to say this once, and this is the only time I'm going to use my position to get one up on you. As pack leader, I order you to go out with Kirishima. And she goes, what? And Ochako hears this and starts giggling, and Izuku repeats himself. And she's like, wait, no, hold on. You're ordering me. And he goes, yep, as pack leader. This is the only time I'm doing it. And Kirishima wasn't there at the moment. And she goes, what happens if I decline? And he goes, you get punished. And she goes, what happens when I get punished? You can't claim to be one of the pack for a week. And she goes, oh God, I don't want to do that. And he says, oh, and also you lose the sense of taste for a week too. And Mina, who's addicted to sweets, is, wait, hold on, we can think about this, right? And he goes, nope, that's my order. She goes, fine. So she walks over to Kirishima and says, tonight, meet me outside of my dorm at 6 o'clock. And he goes, okay. So I'm going to have to end this soon before the recording splits and it's annoying to upload. So they start, and it's Izuku versus Ochako, and it's the speed as the villain and the strength as the hero. And then the rest of the teams are chosen, and Aizawa says, we aren't having a team of 2 for Izuku or Ochako because they are strong enough to beat All Might by themselves. All Might says, aren't you overestimating them just a tiny bit? I'm the number 1 hero. And Izuku says, exactly. That's why he is saying what he is, because you can't sense when there's a big threat. And All Might pulls out the wolf logic of wolves only growl at threats. They back off at threats. And Izuku goes, well, first off, I'm only part wolf. I do have instincts. And they are saying that you are annoying and mean, not that you are a threat. The only person who's actually a threat is someone who takes quirks. Because there's a few quirks that could easily cancel out my quirks. And Aizawa, knowing that if he cancels out Izuku's quirk, any of Izuku's quirks, Beta activates and teleports Izuku away and makes him go berserk. If he cancels out Uraraka's quirk, any of them, Beta activates and teleports Izuku, so he goes crazy. It's kind of a double-edged sword. If Beta activates at all at the wrong time and wrong place, Izuku will go berserk and kill multiple people. And All Might doesn't know this because he doesn't know Izuku has multiple quirks or or Ochako has multiple quirks. He just thinks that they're mutations and that they have the ability of those mutations, like Mirko. She has the increased speed and strength in her legs of a rabbit. So he's underestimating them a lot. I didn't see them in the wolf form. He just saw them in the back of the class sleeping. Or back of the class growling at him. All Might says, I want to give them a challenge. And he says, okay. Instead of Izuku and Ochako versus each other, it's going to be Izuku, Ochako versus the entire class, including teachers. And Aizawa goes, leave me out of this. I'm not joining that. And All Might goes, okay, you don't have to join. Me with the entire class versus them. And the entire class, including Mina, are like, hold on. We don't want to do this. And All Might goes, don't worry, they're the villains. The entire class starts shaking in fear because they know what Izuku can do. And they know what Ochako can do, because Ochako was 0.0001 seconds in the race. And she accidentally crashed into a tree because of how short the distance was. So Aizawa says you have to run around the school within a minute 5 times. And she goes, that's easy. I'll be back in 30 seconds. And Izuku goes, if you're not back in 30 seconds, then he leans down. This is a flashback to the test. And he leans down and she starts shivering. And she goes, I'll be back in 30 seconds. And she says, start, go. And takes off. 29 seconds and 59 milliseconds goes by. And she arrives back and she goes, done. And she's panting a little because she had to run extra fast. And Izuku walks up to her and says, barely. And she relaxed slightly because she was threatened by Izuku to try her hardest. And then later that day, she complains to Izuku about him not trying at all in the ball throw and the grip test. And Izuku says, I can also easily destroy the world if I do my full strength. And she goes, true. So back to present. All Might and the rest of the class are getting ready for the villains exam, and Izuku transforms into the wolf and activates leader of the pack. And Mina was told to sit out because Aizawa and Nezu were told that everybody who adds a wolf design to their costume is part of his pack. So Mina and Kirishima sit out and start talking to each other, and All Might asks why are they sitting out, and Aizawa says, because I said they can. And glares at All Might with the, I'm the actual teacher, you're just a visitor kind of glare. And All Might reluctantly gets the message. And when Izuku activates leader of the pack, Mina and Kirishima feel like they could punch through a brick wall barehanded. Because they slightly can. Then they look at the monitors and say, that's really bright. Can you turn the brightness on the screen down? And All Might says, what do you mean? We haven't touched the brightness on the screen. Then they look at each other and they see that they can see perfectly fine in the dark. Then they figure out, oh, it's probably part of being part of the pack. And Mineta, who's been gawking at Ochako and the other girls, looks at Mina and sees that her once raccoon eyes have turned into slit. Her pupils slit, and he mentions that her pupils are now slit. And so she pulls out a mirror from her pocket and looks at her eyes and sees that they are slit. And she looks at Kirishima's eyes and she sees that his are slit too. So she puts this up to his attention. And all of a sudden, the power goes out in the building that Izuku and Ochako are in. Izuku and Ochako are currently setting up corridors and mapping out the entire layout of the building. Ochako is the speed and Izuku is the strength, so Ochako is currently running around at the speed of sound. No. Running around and being a blur in the night vision cameras. The thermal cameras, all they see is paw prints and after images of heat. And Izuku is slowly transforming into more of a wolf, and he stops when his tail gets fluffier, his ears get a little bit bigger, and his eyes split apart a little bit more. And he goes, this is really uncomfortable, but this is my strongest form. Before turning into a full wolf. And he changes his fingers into claws, and 5 minutes after, Izuku takes the bomb from one room because he knows All Might was watching and puts it in a different room. And Aizawa sees this and starts laughing, and Kirishima and Mina have been watching through the dim screens of their devices, the infrared cameras, and they see Izuku pick up the bomb and move it to a different room. All Might and the rest of the students are like, we shouldn't be doing this. He's too strong. And All Might's like, another mutation quirk I gotta put back in line. All Might steps in the building. We get to see Uraraka's true quirk. Her true quirk is called Animalistic Instincts. And what it does, her absolute true quirk, that was hidden from the quirk doctor, and she could only use it after she was told of all of her quirks, because she can only use it by instinct. What it does is she can change the smell, taste, sight, hearing, and make the person basically paranoid. So you thought you just saw someone there, turn around, and you see them in front of you, and then you turn back around and you still see them. And you think that you're going crazy. You turn back around and they're not there. Then you turn back around, they're gone. And you see stuff that is there and is not there, and you start hearing stuff that's not there, and you start feeling stuff that's not there. And she subconsciously only uses it on All Might. And the rest of the students just beeline it straight for the room that Izuku's sitting in, and it's not the bomb room. And they slowly walk in one by one to have a sparring match with Izuku. And Uraraka's job was just to stall All Might. A minute goes by and Izuku is one sparring match down. He puts the unconscious body of the student in the corner with a strand of capture tape on them. So he doesn't tie them up and make them uncomfortable. He captures all of the students and says, "You have now been captured. Who's next?" The next person walks in. So they all get tutored by Izuku, who fights off of instinct only. And when Bakugo and Dinky come up, Dinky comes first and coats his hands in a little bit of electricity. Not too much, just a little bit. And after a while, he goes, "Stupid." And he goes, "Duh," like in the anime. And Izuku sees this and starts chuckling and chops him in the back of the neck and puts capture tape on him. And then in comes Bakugo. They start sparring, and 10 minutes later, Bakugo is still sparring Izuku. And Izuku's been slowly ramping up more and more and more. And they're still sparring, and Aizawa is seeing this and says, "So he's the battle freak I've been hearing about from the exams." And Izuku finally gets to the point where he's pushing Katsuki back and having Katsuki lose ground on the fight. Then he knocks Katsuki out and puts a piece of capture tape on him, and Aizawa says, "All students have been captured. All Might is left." And the stalling stops, and All Might goes to the room, and Izuku's sitting there waiting for him. And all these students are currently sitting in a corner, leaning on top of each other. Except for Mineta. He's in the opposite corner, currently bound up, tied up, and not allowed to speak. And flashback to the changing room. Mineta peels a poster off the wall that he sees that is loose, and he starts drooling and goes, "Thank you, seniors, you left us presents." And Izuku, having the really good hearing, he hears him whisper and looks back and sees that he's looking at a hole that looks into the women's locker room. Izuku starts releasing bloodlust, and he's so pissed off that he can't control it, and Uraraka starts getting mad and releasing her bloodlust, and Mineta is currently pissing himself for two sources of bloodlust that are aimed directly at him. And so Izuku walks up to him and whispers in his ear, "You're going to regret looking through that hole if you look through it." And Mineta, acting tough, goes, "What are you going to do about it?" And Mineta is currently hanging upside down, bound and squirming, trying to say, "What the hell is going on?" Because once Mineta walked in the room, he got knocked out, and hung upside down. After a minute of waiting, Izuku woke him up and made him watch as he sparred with the rest of the students and just kept taunting Mineta. So All Might sees this and asks, "What have you done to him? Dang villain." Sorry, let me rephrase that to where he actually said it. "You damn villain." And Izuku goes, "I gave him what he deserved. He was trying to peep on the girls." And some of the girls are starting to wake up. And Mina is hearing this entire conversation. And he goes, "He was trying to peep on some of the girls while they were changing. I told him what would happen if he did, and he did, so don't worry, he didn't see anything. I made sure of that." And this is what happened to him. And Mina is starting to freak out because she was peeped on and then heard that he didn't see anything. And starts to calm down. And the rest of the girls who heard that bolted up with the capture tape on and are like, "Oh." So they sit back down and wait for the spar between All Might and Izuku to be over. Izuku says, "Everybody who's currently awake, and I know you people are, take the rest of the class to the observation room and take Ochako with you." And Izuku starts cracking his knuckles going, "This is going to be fun." So they get the rest of the students out of there, except for Mineta. And Izuku immediately, after all the students are out, All Might is stronger in this one, so he doesn't have the wound. And One for All is currently locked up in Tartarus. And he immediately punches All Might out of the entire building, breaking half the building with the single step. Hold on. So 30 minutes go by and All Might and Izuku are still beating the living hell out of each other. And Izuku starts getting tired and bored, and he finally outspeeds All Might and hits him in the back of the head really hard, knocking him out. And he takes All Might to Recovery Girl, and All Might in this one does not shrink down because he's not injured. So he stays normal might, and Recovery Girl asks what the hell happened, and Izuku says, "All Might challenged me to a fight. I just had to teach him why you don't challenge someone stronger than you to a fight." And Recovery Girl goes, "Okay." And Aizawa walks into the Recovery Girl's office and is laughing his ass off. And he walks over to Izuku and goes, "I didn't know you had that much strength. That's freaking hilarious." And he's still trying not to fall to the ground laughing so hard. So Izuku says, "You're welcome for the joke bit. I think it's time for us to leave class for the day." And Aizawa says, "You're right. Give me a minute." And he walks to the classroom where everybody else is sitting, including Ochako, and Ochako's starting to panic, like, "Where's Izuku? Is he hurt?" And Izuku walks in and basically body flickers like in Naruto to Ochako and hugs her, saying, "I'm fine, don't worry." And he goes, "I am kind of hungry. I'll go for some bacon donuts." there's a donut place where I live, and it sells donuts with bacon flakes on top. So good. And she goes, is that sweet? And he goes, yes. And she asks, is it savory? And he goes, really? And she goes, yeah. And he goes, okay, we gotta wait for Aizawa to dismiss us. And she goes, okay. So they're waiting, and Aizawa finally stops ruffling or shuffling through his desk and pulls out a stack of papers, hands them out, and says, get your guardians to sign on this stuff. And Izuku and Ochako walk up to Aizawa and say, we don't know who our parents are, and we've been treating Nezu like our guardian.